Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is super exciting because I'm doing my first ever interview. Today I'm speaking to Taylor Silfverduk. Taylor is a registered dietitian. You may have already heard of her on Instagram as Celiac Dietitian. She makes amazing gluten-free and celiac content. In this interview, we cover a lot. Her celiac journey, the top 5 most common questions she gets asked as a celiac dietitian, and some common misconceptions, which may have me retiring my trademarked term, cross-contam. I loved this conversation, and I'm sure you will too. So without further ado, Taylor Silfverduk. Hi Taylor, thank you so much for joining me on my channel.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So just to start off, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do?
My name's Taylor Silfverduk. I'm a registered dietitian in Columbus, Ohio, and I see clients virtually for celiac disease. So I have celiac disease myself, and I specialize in helping other people with celiac disease find freedom in the diagnosis, because it can be really restrictive, but it doesn't have to rule your life, and that's the whole reason why I'm in practice, because I want to make sure people have that freedom.
I love that, and I love that about all the content you make too. It's very much like living your best life with celiac disease. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey with celiac disease?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed in high school, but for years before my diagnosis, I was struggling with GERD, GI distress, and I kept going to the doctor complaining, and they would tell me time and time again, it's just GERD, take this pill, or it's IBS, and I was never tested for anything ever. So fast forward a couple of years, and my mom got diagnosed with celiac disease. And that led to the testing of me, because they were like, oh, maybe we should test you for something. So they tested me for celiac, and I had it. So I was diagnosed around high school. I think I was 14. So I had to go through high school with celiac. I ended up skipping a lot of my lunches because it was just so awkward to deal with that social aspect. And I was still like trying to figure out what living gluten-free looked like for me. And I really became obsessed with healing myself. So in high school, I started my own fermentation business. I started selling probiotic foods, and I decided that I wanted to help people beyond just selling fermented foods, and I decided to pursue nutrition. Honestly, I was at a family dinner, a dinner with friends, and they were talking about struggling with some symptom, and I was like, you should try mint with that, because mint's good for gas. And they were like, you should be a dietitian. And I was like, yeah, I should be a dietitian. So then I switched gears, pursued dietetics I thought I was going to just help people with gut health, which I guess I do that in a sense now, but I did not think I was going to specialize in celiac disease. But as I was studying nutrition and I was posting on social media and communicating with other people who were gluten-free, I really fell in love with helping other people with celiac disease. And I really fell in love with communicating with the gluten-free community and advocating for them. And so I just kind of fell into specializing in celiac disease.
So when you first went gluten-free, I mean, you sort of mentioned the social aspect, but like, what would you say was the biggest challenge for you?
I think the social aspect was definitely a challenge, especially because I was in high school, but also because I didn't receive any follow-up care. I didn't get a referral to a dietitian, and I didn't have any professional guidance. So I definitely fell into disordered eating habits. And I see that a lot in my celiac clients, and I see that a lot in the celiac space of excessive restriction that goes beyond what's necessary, and there's no one there supporting you or telling you what to do, so it's up to you. And it's really easy to be given a diagnosis like this after suffering for years to go down the route of control. And so I think the biggest challenge for me was undoing all of that disordered eating behavior, which took years, and figuring out what that freedom for me looks like with celiac disease. Doing that by myself was probably the biggest challenge.
I can't believe how little like follow-up there is with celiac disease. You know, like most other diseases, there's a very clear regimen, but I feel like a lot of people, their experience is that the doctor just says, just go gluten-free, and and that's it. And then people are on their own to do their own research and that sort of thing, which is just, it shouldn't be the way that it is.
Yeah, definitely. I think the follow-up care is lacking with celiac disease. It's really unfortunate because people, and I think this is part of diet culture, people assume diets are easy and you just need to, with living gluten-free, you just need to cut out gluten. But first, we live in a gluten-centric culture. Gluten is everywhere. You see it with birthday cakes, pies at Thanksgiving. Gluten is literally a part of our culture and our tradition, and that alone is very disruptive in living gluten-free. And then you add on the fact that not only do you have to avoid gluten, but you have to avoid cross contact. It makes it 10 times harder. It's not just looking at a food label and removing gluten from your diet. It's also making sure that if someone wants to prepare you a meal, they know how to prepare a meal safely for you in their kitchen that has gluten in it. It's a lot more complex. And I think that that's something that's missed in a lot of training for healthcare providers, unfortunately, and that's something that I'm working to change. But it's slow going, and it's definitely unfortunate. Even the awareness around follow-up testing for celiac disease, I find a lot of people aren't aware that they are supposed to get follow-up blood work to make sure that your antibodies are going down and that you're still responding to a gluten-free diet. Follow-up care when it comes to getting a follow-up endoscopy to make sure that your small intestine is healing, because the improved antibodies doesn't always translate to a healed small intestine. So that follow-up care is also essential. And I also see a lot of the times people are diagnosed with celiac disease and then they never hear about it again from their doctors. Ever. No one ever brings it up again, unless they're complaining of GI distress, and then the doctor will write it off as celiac and not do anything about it. I know I talk a lot about how there is a lack of follow-up care and a lack of awareness, and this isn't me being anti-doctor. This is just me acknowledging a widespread problem when it comes to celiac follow-up care and a lack of awareness. And I absolutely think you should be following up with your doctor and seeing your doctor, but if your doctor isn't aware or isn't supportive of your celiac diagnosis and the proper follow-up care, then you absolutely have a right to go find a doctor who is aware and is willing to follow up.
I read my report that I didn't read it till like a year later, but it said I was supposed to get a follow-up blood test. Nobody told that to me. So then I went to go see a doctor and he told me there was no point of getting a follow-up blood test. If you get the proper advice from a celiac dietitian, then you have the confidence to like advocate for yourself and say like, no, I really think I should get this done, rather than, you know, kind of what I did, which was like, okay, sure, I guess I just won't do it.
Yeah, I work a lot with my clients on helping them advocate for themselves with their doctors, because a lot of the times doctors they really do want to help you. They're just not aware of the proper follow-up testing. So helping them spread that awareness, educating them that it feels like it's pointless, but you do, like, the whole point is to make sure you are testing negative for celiac. The whole point is that celiac panel is coming back negative, which means that you are eating gluten-free and that your body is responding. And you can see that in the autoimmune response in that celiac panel. And you can also see that in the healed small intestine.
All right, so next I wanted to ask you what some of the top questions you get asked as a celiac dietitian are. We talked about these previously, so I'm going to ask you these questions and let's get some answers. So the first one might be kind of hard to answer, but it's just a general, is this gluten-free? So how would you in general like respond to that sort of question?
Usually I respond to those kinds of questions with asking them follow-up questions. So I like to encourage people to build their own label reading skills. That is essential to living gluten-free and feeling confident and not feeling like the world is out to get you. Having that knowledge, having those skills is essential. So if someone were to send me that message, I ask them, what are you worried about on this food label? What is concerning you? What are you unsure about? And then I will give them resources to figure out and help them determine if that product is safe for them.
I really like that because it really, it involves like people learning about those ingredients rather than just getting like a yes or no, so that over time they'll really learn about what's safe and what's not. The next question was, when am I going to start feeling better?
Yeah, and I get that question all the time. And unfortunately, there is no set date of like when you're diagnosed to when you feel better. There is no set timeline. It's really different for everyone. It's dependent on how much damage you have, how long it takes for you to adapt to a gluten-free lifestyle, if you have any nutrient deficiencies, what your relationship with food looks like. There's a lot that plays into it. So Most people feel better within a couple of months to a few years. It really just depends on the person and what's going on. And obviously, a celiac registered dietitian can help speed that up a little bit, but also a lot of that is also related to your situation, how long it took for you to get diagnosed, how much damage there is, how much of an autoimmune reaction there is that needs to quiet down, and again, how long it takes for you to adapt to a gluten-free lifestyle.
How do I manage cross contact when I live with other people? What are the best practices?
Yeah, and I feel like I'm the queen of this because I lived on campus with 5 roommates. So that was like incredibly stressful when I made that decision. I was like, what am I doing? Because I was going from an entirely dedicated gluten-free home to a shared home with 5 other people who were not gluten-free. So luckily one of them was my boyfriend, who's very aware of my gluten-free needs. And the other was a peer that I was going to school with who was also very aware. But what I did is I color coded everything. I kept separate dishes, separate pots and pans, and I had a small section of the kitchen counter that was just gluten-free. So I had my own safe space in that kitchen. And then everyone knew, like, if it was blue or teal, it was gluten-free and they can't use it. And it was just for me. And that small section of the counter was also for me. And I know that that is also probably cost prohibitive and probably not necessary if you're not living with 5 other people, like 5 other wild cards. But that is an option, especially if that is a scenario you're going through, if you're living with a bunch of roommates on campus. The other thing I think was important in that situation was I made sure everyone knew I'm not going to be mad if you used something. So like if you used my dish brush, which is something that I would need to replace, just let me know, or just put it in the dishwasher and wash it. That way I know that it's safe. So just let me know if something's happened or you've used my toaster or something like that. That way I can address it and not get sick. I'm not going to be mad. I just want to know in order to keep myself safe. In like a general family setting, soap and water is your best friend. Soap and water has been researched to reduce cross contact to less than 5 parts per million in most cases, even with wooden cooking utensils. If you wash something with soap and water, it is going to be safe. Also, if you put it in the dishwasher, as long as you're not seeing any residues on your dishes, they're going to be safe. So
great. And while we're on that topic, let's just cover the other question, which is like, do I need to get rid of everything in my kitchen when I get diagnosed with celiac disease?
In most cases, you can just wash it with soap and water and you should be good to go. If it's hard to clean and you can replace it, I would. So like, for example, if you have like a waffle iron that doesn't have removable plates and it's really hard to clean, that might be something that I would replace. Or a cast iron skillet, obviously that is one of the things that you can't just wash and it be safe. You do need to replace that. But in general, if it's easy to clean and you can wash it with soap and water, then you are totally good to go to keep using your current kitchen. But I will also say, and I emphasize this with all of my clients, your comfort matters. So if you feel more comfortable and you're able to replace things in your kitchen, by all means, if it makes you feel more comfortable and it gives you that peace of mind, it is worth it. But in most cases, it's not necessary. And the same goes for determining if you want to live in a shared household or you want a dedicated gluten-free home. Because I know a lot of families, someone's diagnosed and they have that tough decision to make. Understanding like comfort level, education level, skill level all plays into that. So there's not one set answer for anything. It really just depends on the person. And so holding space for that too.
All right, so the next question is, when does it get easier?
It's hard for me to give a set answer for that because it really just depends on the person. How well are you adapting to a gluten-free diet? Do you have the proper support, whether it is from a celiac registered dietitian or from friends and family or from other celiac peers? And then where are you getting your information from? Where are you getting the recommendations that you're using to stay celiac safe from? Cool. And are those recommendations up to date?
Yes, that is so key. I think that generally I've accepted the gluten-free thing. I can go and watch my friends eat pizza and I'm like, I'm not too mad about it. Like I know that I literally cannot eat it and my body won't let me. So it's not that upsetting. But you know, even a couple weeks ago, I had this social meetup I was supposed to go to at a restaurant that was like a burgers and fries and beer place. And I was like, I don't have time to make dinner before I go, but I know I can't eat there. Like, what do? I was kind of having a bit of a panic. I think you just know it's going to be okay, you know?
Yeah. And in part, those situations feel less world-ending at the end of it because you know you've been through them before. You have that lived experience. You have that proof that, okay, this is going to suck. I'm not sure what I'm going to eat. I'm really hungry, but I'm also going to make it through the end, right? Like, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Also, I think on the way to that event, as I was walking to the bar we were going to, I noticed like 3 places. They had a gluten-free fryer there, or I could stop at this grocery store and pick something up. Worst comes to worst, if there's nothing I can eat, I will just like duck out, go grab some fries, and then come back. Like, it's not the end of the world.
And something I also like to remind people about when it comes to when it gets easier is, first, I think it never actually gets easier. It just becomes more routine. You get more used to it, but that doesn't make it less hard. And then I also remind people, like, this is a lifelong journey. So there is no final set point of like, oh, I'm gluten-free and everything's going to be perfect and I've got everything down. You're going to be living gluten-free for the rest of your life. Recommendations are going to change. Options are going to change. Awareness is going to change. And you're going to be put in new situations all of the time. And so it's a journey. There's no finish line, if you will, on celiac management and celiac ease. It's a continuing journey. And even I, as a registered dietitian specialized in celiac, who's lived with celiac for almost 10 years, like, I'm still throwing curveballs and I'm like, oh, I need to research that more because I actually don't know. So it's definitely a journey.
And then the last question you said you get asked the most frequently is about silent celiac or asymptomatic celiac. What do people ask you about that?
So I get a lot of questions about asymptomatic and silent celiac, and I get about like 3 general questions around the first one being, how do I know if I'm getting better? And I'm going to tie that back to our conversation around proper follow-up care, especially with silent and asymptomatic celiac. It's essential that you're following up, even more so because you're not having that outward feedback. So making sure you're getting the proper follow-up celiac panel every 3 to 6 months after diagnosis until normalized, and then every year after, and then getting the follow-up endoscopy to make sure that your small intestine is actually healing and responding to your gluten-free precautions. On top of that, I also get the question of, how do I know if I've been glutened? And the unfortunate answer is, you're not going to know if you don't have symptoms. If you truly have silent celiac, it's going to be difficult for you to figure that out. I have noticed in some clients that say that they have silent celiac that they've noticed some atypical symptoms as they've gone gluten-free and are exposed to gluten. So some people will get headaches. Other people, they just may feel really fatigued and tired. So you may start to notice some symptoms. You may not, and you may never know, and you may never have that outward feedback. If you really wanted to know, there are some at-home gluten detection kits that you could get. So if you were doing something a little bit more risky, like dining out, and you wanted to know if the precautions you're taking are appropriate, you might be able to use one of those kits. They're really expensive. I don't really recommend it. I think ultimately it comes down to what your follow-up testing is saying. And then the other question I get around asymptomatic and silent celiac is, how do I stay gluten-free if I don't have these obvious outward symptoms like symptomatic celiacs get? Like, symptomatic celiacs, we're sick for days, maybe even weeks, and we feel really ill. And so it's motivation to avoid gluten on top of the fact that we know it's damaging our body. But with asymptomatic celiac, if you're not having that immediate outward feedback, it can be really hard to stay gluten-free and stay motivated to live such a restrictive lifestyle when you don't have that immediate feedback. So first, I'm holding space for that because that would be really hard. And second, I like to approach this with my clients in a space of cultivating body kindness and body respect. So is it respectful for you to be risky in certain situations? Is it respectful to your body to eat gluten when you know it's going to harm your small intestine? Is it kind to do those things? And that can be hard depending where you are at in your relationship with your body. Maybe you don't have that as a value for yourself, but cultivating those values and growing that with people who are asymptomatic can be helpful in helping them stick to living gluten-free.
That's great. I love that. So now I'm going to shift into a couple of questions that I have gotten on my YouTube channel or through my Instagram page. Thank you everyone who does leave comments. I really appreciate it. But some of these questions, I am not a medical professional. I don't want to answer them. I'm not qualified to answer them, which is why I wanted to have a celiac dietitian come on to give you some of those answers. So the first thing is If I accidentally get glutened, do I take anything to help?
I see this all the time, and unfortunately for celiac disease, there is no clinically researched or proven supplement or drug that can help ease celiac symptoms or prevent damage or prevent the autoimmune reaction as of right now. I know there's some things being researched, but as of filming right now in October 2021, there is nothing that's out on the market that's been clinically proven to help ease the symptoms of celiac disease, prevent the autoimmune reaction, or prevent damage to the small intestine. So that does count for activated charcoal and gluten digestive enzymes. However, I will say for gluten digestive enzymes, those have been proven in some cases to help with non-celiac gluten sensitivity or gluten intolerance, which is a completely different thing from celiac disease. And if you want more information on that, I will give Robin a link to put in the description on the differences between celiac disease and non-celiac gluten sensitivity. But because they are different, gluten digestive enzymes can be helpful for gluten intolerance, but they're not proven or clinically effective for celiac disease. So the best thing you can do if you've been glutened with celiac disease is to be aware of your symptoms and really focus on self-soothing and taking care of yourself in that moment.
If you accidentally consume gluten, how much damage does it cause and how long does it take to repair?
First, I just want to reassure you that if you've been exposed to gluten, you did not undo all of your healing. You did not undo your entire healing journey with celiac disease. Where we see the issues occur is with constant, continual, repeated gluten exposure. And this is not me saying that it is okay to occasionally intentionally eat gluten. You really want to leave that open for accidental exposures because they can happen, and they do happen even to the best of us. So rest assured, one accidental gluten exposure is not going to undo everything. And when it comes to healing the damage that that exposure has done, it is also really dependent on the person. And I would focus on overall healing as opposed to that one incident, and just stay on course. Stay eating gluten-free, stay eating to support your healing, and stay focusing on that overall healing journey. Don't let that one moment overtake and consume your entire journey.
And then the next question is about, do you have any suggestions for gluten-free meal prep or resources?
I guess what I'll say about gluten-free meal prep is figuring out what works for you, figuring out the foods that you enjoy and how is that going to fit into your lifestyle, and not doing it how an influencer says to do it, but really just tuning into yourself, your needs, your habits, your lifestyle, and figuring out if you do want to meal prep, where does that fit, and where does that fit in a way that's sustainable in however long you want to meal prep for. And I also want to give permission to everyone that you can include convenience foods in your meal prep. So if that means buying microwavable rice or frozen vegetables or canned vegetables, if that makes it easier for you to prepare foods ahead of time or prepare foods in the moment, that is also totally acceptable too. There are no rules for meal prep aside from whatever works for you and whatever is supporting the goals that you are hoping that meal prep is going to help you with. And if you need help with that, this is something that I do work with a lot of my clients on.
Awesome. And yeah, I did see on Taylor's blog, she does have a couple of, like one pot dishes that you can make, that sort of thing. There are just so many recipes on the internet, cookbooks and that sort of thing. And when you're cooking at home, it's just so easy to turn things gluten-free. You make a rice-based thing, you swap out the soy sauce with tamari, that sort of thing. It's really not as difficult as it may seem right away, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that that's one of the bonuses to your courses, especially when it comes to baking, is you're learning what all of these things are doing. And so you'd be able to convert a recipe you see online because you're understanding how all of these flours are working in the gluten-filled product and then how you can replicate that in the gluten-free product. But I'll also say, on the topic of all the recipes that are available, if it's a matter of meal prep and being bored of the food that you're eating, or you feel like you're just stuck in a rut when it comes to gluten-free cooking, one of the best tips that I can give is to focus on one new recipe a week. I think a lot of people get overwhelmed when they try to have something new every single day and they're trying to learn a new recipe every single day. Focus on one. See if you like it. If you do, you can add it to your rotation. And if you don't, no harm, no foul. You can just try a new recipe next week.
Perfect. You know what's great? A chili.
Yeah. Dump and go. That's my favorite.
Yeah. You make like a giant, double batch, eat it all week. Super comforting. Love a good chili. Now I want to go into a couple of questions that if I were to ask a celiac dietitian now, what would I ask? So my first question is it normal for other foods other than gluten to make me feel unwell? Is it my gut is just sensitive from being celiac? You know, for example, I have found that quinoa causes me like intense stomach burning, and I'm just like kind of scared to eat it now. I mean, quinoa is gluten-free. I'm not saying it's not gluten-free, but something about it just bothers me. So is that normal?
Yes, it's very common for people with celiac disease to have other food intolerances and food sensitivities, in part because with celiac disease, your small intestine is damaged, specifically at the duodenum of your small intestine, where you have the microvilli and villi, and then deeper in there, your brush border, which releases a lot of digestive enzymes, and all of that plays a huge role in digestion and breaking down foods for absorption. So with that, I do see a lot of food intolerances related to that, as well as I do feel like the celiac community, and this is purely anecdotal, is at higher risk for other food sensitivities and food intolerances. I commonly see that in my own clients and in other celiac patient reports. And with that, I think it's really important that you are working with a celiac registered dietitian to rule out if what you're experiencing is actually gluten, or if in this case it's something else. Like, you know, quinoa is gluten-free, but something else is triggering you there. And with that, there are a lot of things that play into reactivity to foods. It might not be the food themselves, but what's making up the food. Some people need to be careful about fat quantity in their meals. Other people need to be careful about how large their meals are. And in other cases, it's related to meal timing, meal spacing, what else did you have that day? And there's so much that plays into it. And I think with celiac disease, it's really easy to have that answer that gluten is causing all of these digestive symptoms. And so thus, I'm not feeling well, it must be gluten. And working with a registered dietitian can really help you narrow down if it really is gluten or if there's something else at play. Because oftentimes, especially in the case of something that is gluten-free, like for instance, quinoa, or if you're eating something that clearly says certified gluten-free on the label, there's something else at play. And celiac specialized registered dietitians are uniquely trained and are aware of all of the other things that could be at play and can easily spot those things in a session or a few sessions to help you figure out what's really going on there.
So we kind of already touched on this earlier, but should I be doing follow-up tests like a blood test and an endoscopy, and kind of like when would you recommend doing that? What time frame?
For celiac disease, when you're first diagnosed, the general recommendation is every 3 to 6 months after your diagnosis until your celiac panel, your celiac blood test, comes back normal. And this only applies if your celiac panel was elevated at diagnosis. There are some cases where it's not, but your small intestine is indicative of celiac disease. And then in that case, you were just relying on the follow-up endoscopies. And in general, for a follow-up endoscopy, whether you did have a positive celiac panel or not, the follow-up endoscopy is done every year after diagnosis until normalized, and that's just to make sure that your small intestine is healed and you don't have other complications like refractory celiac or non-responsive celiac, and you don't need additional interventions. And then once your small intestine is confirmed to have healed or confirmed to be on the right track to healing, they generally recommend to do another follow-up endoscopy every 3 to 5 years after, just to make sure that your body is still responding to your gluten-free precautions and everything is fine and dandy. On top of that, if you were diagnosed with any nutrient deficiencies, you want to make sure you're following up with that as needed. In general, that can be done at the same time that you're getting those celiac panels until those have been normalized. And then also something that is not talked about enough is it is essential that you are getting a bone density scan at diagnosis, because celiac disease can impact your bones. So making sure that you're getting that done at diagnosis or within a year or whenever you can get it done to make sure that your bone density is okay, or if you need to continue to follow up on that and do interventions that address that complication as well.
I have done literally 0 of these things. I need to get on that. Okay, and then the last question that I have been dying to ask a celiac dietitian is in regards to cross-contamination. I'm not really sure how to ask this, but basically my question is, am I being too paranoid? So let me just give you an example. When my boyfriend and I get pizza, we have a bottle of sriracha that we put on our pizzas. And we usually just like do it back and forth. We grab the bottle, we put it on. And anytime he grabs it with his gluten-y hands, I'm like, should I be wiping that down? Like, can I just grab it? Is it gonna get on my fingers? Like, if I can't see any crumbs, like, is there any possibility of me getting gluten from that? So am I being paranoid in those situations, or should I really be doing something about that?
I first will also say cross-contact is different from cross-contamination.
You know, I've kind of started this whole like cross-contam thing on my channel, and I'm a little bit sad that I shouldn't be saying it anymore.
You can say cross-con. It can still be a thing. I think it's especially important when you're talking to food service staff because they are trained on the difference. So cross-contamination can be killed by heat, which is why we have this myth that with grilling, you can just grill the cross-contact off, or you can just grill the gluten away, or you can like fry it away. So with cross-contamination, it's the transference of biological contaminants to things. So usually it's bacterial or viral to food items, and you can just cook that off. But with cross-contact, you can't cook food allergenic proteins off. So it's really important that you're washing it off, or if there has been that cross-contact, you're remaking it.
Crazy. I have seen people try to use like hand sanitizer.
No, doesn't work. You can't kill.
It's not a bacteria.
Right. Yeah. Which is why it's really essential you're using soap and water and not disinfectant or bleach or anything like that. You can't kill gluten. You have to wash it away. You have to remove it. So that's the key difference, and why I think the celiac associations are also going really hard on specifying cross-contact, because it cannot be killed. You can't just like cook it off, but you can clean it off. That's the only way to remove it.
Okay, so back to the sriracha bottle question. Am I being paranoid?
No, I don't think so. That would be the same thing as like someone just made a gluten-filled hamburger for somebody, and you don't see anything on their hands, and they make you a gluten-free hamburger. There's still cross-contact there. So I don't want to scare anybody, and I don't want them to think that like gluten could be hiding anywhere and it's hiding from like you in plain sight. But in those cases where it's very clear that there's cross-contact happening, you can see him touching the pizza, you can see him touching the sriracha bottle, and there's grease there. There's a lot of things that could be holding those particles onto that bottle. There's nothing to like be terrified about, just be aware of it. And if I were in that situation, I would either put some sriracha in a separate container that I would then be dipping my pizza in, or just have just wash down the bottle before you use it, or wash your hands after you serve the sriracha.
Okay. You hear that? He's not listening. All right, Taylor, I want to do just like a couple quick rapid fire questions with you. Are you down for that?
Let's do it.
Okay. So question number 1, what is one fun fact about yourself?
I'm a dual citizen of both the United States of America and Sweden.
Cool. Okay. What is your favorite gluten-free bread?
Char gluten-free. It just came to the top of my head. I just feel like it's small, but it tastes really good.
Is there like is it like the multigrain or the white or the whatever? Or?
Literally any of them.
Any of them? Okay.
I will take any of them.
Gluten-free pasta.
Banza.
What is it?
Banza pasta. Do you guys have banza pasta? It's a bean pasta. It's just a way to add extra protein, and I have really grown to love it. Has like a little bit of a nutty flavor, but I've really grown to love like the way that adds into your pasta dishes. It's definitely not the same as regular pasta, like gluten-filled pasta. Unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of good options when I was like learning all the gluten-free ways. So I just grew to love banza and bean pasta in general. So that's my preference now, actually. But I think Jovial is the one that I've tasted that tasted the most like gluten-filled pasta.
Favorite gluten-free pizza? So either takeout or like a frozen pizza, whichever one.
Is it bad that I literally don't have one? I will take any gluten-free pizza anyone hands me. Like, if it's gluten-free and celiac safe, I'm eating it, and I have no preference. I want the pizza crust. It could be cardboard. I want the pizza sauce, and I want the cheese. Is it bad?
Fair.
Like, I'm taking any gluten-free pizza. Like, I have no preference. Please don't try to just grab a gluten-free pizza for me. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, gluten-free snack.
Chips and salsa, my ride or die.
Chips like a corn chip?
Corn chips and salsa.
I love corn chips are like one of those things I always have in my cupboard.
And it's a great way to add whole grains into your diet, which is something I think a lot of people with celiac disease struggle with, because gluten and wheat was that one whole grain that everyone always had. So corn chips, really great way to add whole grains into, and they're delicious.
Awesome. And favorite comfort food? Or did we already cover it with pizza?
I'm like, wow, why is this so hard for me?
Is it the choosing just one? Because that would be what's hard for me, probably.
Yeah, I think it's all the gluten-free comfort foods, like mashed potatoes, corn chips and salsa. Really, honestly, rice and beans. I'm going to go with rice and beans because it's really easy. You're getting protein, you're getting carbs. You can dress it up and make it different in so many different ways. And I survived off of that all through college. So it just like I could have rice and beans all the time. And I know that's probably not popular. No, people are probably sick on rice and beans, but it works for me. And it's cheap.
Yeah, all good points.
I mean, maybe I changed my answer to just rice, because I could also just pack down rice. I don't know,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to make you choose. Taylor, thank you so much for answering all these questions. I think it's going to be really, really helpful for people. So where can people find you on the interwebs?
So you can find me at Celiac Dietitian on Instagram. I post a lot there about celiac disease, the many ways that it impacts you and ways that you can take care of yourself with celiac disease. You can also find me on my website at taylor.silfverduk.us. I post blog posts about celiac disease, recipes, and you can also learn more about how to work with me there as well.
Yeah, so Taylor also has this really awesome celiac crash course. Can you just, like, in a quick little blurb, tell us what your crash course is?
Yeah, so I offer the Celiac Crash Course, which covers everything a celiac needs to know to keep them safe at diagnosis. So it covers cross-contact in a shared home, how to set up your kitchen if you're living in a shared home, how to set up your kitchen if you were just diagnosed and you're planning to have a dedicated gluten-free home, how to read a food label in the United States, and how to survive the holidays, how to travel. Covers everything a celiac needs to know in order to stay safe in a gluten-free life. And so if you need that support, if you need that dietitian provided question and answer kind of situation, that is the best place to get it.
Awesome. And can people book, one-on-one sessions with you as well?
Yes, I am still seeing people one-on-one. So if you're interested in that, if you click the work with me section, I don't know, actually I could give you a link where they can schedule a free call.
So if you want to book one of those one-on-one consultations, I'll put a link for you in the description. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me, Taylor.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much to Taylor for chatting with me today, and thank you for watching. I hope this video covered some of your most burning questions about celiac disease, but if there's anything that we didn't cover, let me know in the comments below. And while you're there, let me know if you enjoyed this interview style video. I've got a few more in the works, so be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when those videos are up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.